Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am O'Brien McMahon, and this is People Business. In this episode, I am joined by Bianca D'Alessio. Bianca is one of the top real estate brokers in New York, a global speaker, and she is the author of a new book, Mastering Intentions: 10 Practices to Amplify Your Power and Lead with Lasting Impact. This was a fun conversation. She and I think a lot alike in several ways, but she comes at it maybe with a different approach than I would take, a different mindset that I might take. And so we talk a lot about her mindset, her background, what she's learned from some of her mentors. We go deep into how she builds her team, how she thinks about her role as a salesperson, which is relevant to everybody. I promise we're all in sales in some capacity. We're all building relationships all the time and interacting with people in our work and in our communities. So I think that's really relevant. And we talk in the end about what goes on between our ears and how we can really be engaged and disciplined and driven, and also relaxed and go with the flow and enjoy the time that we have while we're here on this planet. So fun conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think you will too. Here is Bianca D'Alessio. Bianca, welcome to the show. I am excited to dive into this. I finished your book the other day and had a bunch of stuff underlined. And so I'm a big fan of personal development and thinking about our own psychology and how we build teams and think about their psychology. And I got a lot of questions and I'm excited to dive in today. So welcome.
Amazing. I'm so excited to be here and I can't wait to hear what you think.
Yeah. I want to start out in kind of an odd spot, but I noticed that the book is dedicated to Professor Mulcahy. Is that right? I've seen books dedicated to all different kinds of people. It stuck out that yours was dedicated to a professor. Are you willing to share who that person was and what role they played in your life?
So Professor Mulcahy was a college professor of mine when I studied abroad. He lived in China with me and he taught me entrepreneurship in China. He was unlike any other professor that I had ever had in that he was very hands-on. The way that he challenged our mind, the people he introduced us to, his vigor and his excitement for life was larger and is larger than life. Every experience or outing or introduction he made was always memorable beyond. And prior writing the book, we had our 10-year reunion for my study abroad trip. And we were out to dinner. And I was always the person who needed to kick off every activity or group event with an activity. So I was like, let's do a high-low high of everyone for the past decade. So we ran around this table of all these people that I haven't seen since college. And one of my highs was that I'm in the process of writing a book and I'm super excited about it. And later after that dinner, he was like, I would love to speak to you about the book. So at this point in time, this book was a real estate sales book. And he loved the idea. He loved what I was talking about, loved what I'd been up to since we kept in touch, but not enough. And he's written multiple books. He's like, I'd love to help coach you through the process if you want a writing coach. And I was like, I would love that because right now I feel like I am throwing darts to the wall with a blindfold on and I don't really know what direction I'm going because I have so many things I want to say. And he just like fully jumped in from like Zooms every day to making sure I was staying accountable, to like organizing my thoughts, to helping me brainstorm the way I was writing to see if my point would land or stick or if his story worked. He was very involved in the whole process and made it so fun. Like literal like 6 a.m. Zooms and then 11 p.m. Zooms. He's like, so how did you do writing today? And I'm like, I did great, or it's going terrible. Yes, he has made this process so fun and he's just an incredible human being.
That's incredible. Shout out to Professor
Thank
Mulcahy.
you.
That is awesome. So what are some of the things that you have taken away or implemented from him?
So he was very big on always make the ask. And that's something that I talk about in the book. One of the activities we did when we lived in China is we went to a factory and then we were in Yiwu where they make everything that we have here is probably made in this factory or a factory similar to it. And we had to come up with a business concept, an idea, and he would introduce us to these entrepreneurs. And every person he would introduce us to, he said, always make the ask, always make the ask. So we met a wine entrepreneur when we were there. By the end of our time there, this guy was sponsoring and hosting our events at his venues and giving us wine and doing free tastings. And it was because he asked, and he did that with everyone. And so there are so many things, but always make the ask, and counting your asks and leveling up with your asks, because the worst thing that someone could say is yes, no, or give you no answer at all. So why not ask for it?
Yeah. All right. Let's just dive into that one. Or I guess let me ask first, before we do that, any other big lessons from him? Because I want to get into that one.
Yeah, okay. I think it's that, but I think it's also like his enthusiasm for life. I think he makes being an entrepreneur and a very successful person feel approachable. We've talked a lot through his journey, but in hearing about, he's been married to one woman his entire life. And I think there's something to say about that, about the way that he has redefined his relationship. In the book, they live somewhere new every 6 months, and they both operate incredible businesses, and they travel the world for their clients. And I just think, for me personally, it felt very aspirational. God, I love the way that he's doing it. Like, he continues to have fun, be very successful, hold himself to a super high standard, be like honest and lead with integrity and value relationships and the person that he's committed himself to, but like also bring a lot of excitement into life and not play by any playbook. And I think that's very inspirational.
All right. I got questions. Before
I can't wait to tell him that we've talked about him for so much.
Oh, we're going to keep talking about him. This is great. So let's just set up the book. So in the introduction, I gave the title of the book, which is Mastering Intentions, 10 Practices to Amplify Your Power and Lead with Lasting Impact. Mm-hmm. What's your sales pitch for the book, and what do you hope people get out of it before we dive into unpacking it all?
So for me, as I was writing the book, it really became so therapeutic. And why it became so therapeutic was like diving into my own story. I've always been on this journey of self-discovery and self-awareness and self-help and trying to become better. But it was really through understanding and diving into my own story that I found so much power within my own life and within my own framework. And I believe we all have that. I think it's just taking the time to be still, be quiet, be undistracted, and to narrow in on where are all of those core moments or those pivotal turning points that happen in our life, both the really high highs and the really low lows that have shaped us and helped us to become the person that we are today. What did we learn from them? How do they transform our mindset? And so my hope with this book, more than anything, is that people take the time to dive into their own story. Because once you understand your own story and the way that you exist in the world, it helps you better connect to other people, relate to other people, find your purpose and your passion, because then you have such a deeper level of this self-awareness and understanding. And I believe that's where it all starts. There's a lot of other things I hope people get out of it, but if there's one thing I hope you could take from it is like, there's so much story in your power, and your adversity is your advantage if you find ways to tell that story and connect with people.
Love it. Love it. All right, let's pick apart Professor Mulcahy. So he said, always make the ask. You're an entrepreneur, you're in real estate, you're in sales, always make the ask. Sure. Okay. You're a salesperson, but what does it mean to always make the ask? And what is the art of making an ask?
Yeah. So I think that the framework of always make the ask was the simplified version on what does that actually mean in my sales position. I think it's always figuring out, how do you guide someone and bring them in the direction you want them to go to get to the ultimate result. And so I say this with my team all the time as we're working through and trying to coach our clients. Like, why are we working with this person? What are we supposed to be delivering? How do we help guide them there? And in making those asks and making those questions, are we asking the right questions to make their brain think and to re-guide and to redirect them to why we are working here together? I am a licensed real estate professional. I sell houses, right? A client has hired me to sell their house. You know, one of the first questions I always ask every client, and if there's one thing you realize, like, my playbook is out here, I want people to know, it's, what is your goal? And some people love that because it forces them to really think, and other people hate that because it requires them to be vulnerable. And that's okay. what is your goal? Because there is a real financial pressure and stress to understanding why you're selling real estate. And sometimes there's a timeline. And I can only help a client achieve that financial goal and meet their timeline if they communicate that with me.
Yeah,
If
if
they
they're
don't,
honest
and then
about
they're
it.
frustrated, there's no way. If someone needs to sell their house in the next 30 days and hit a certain number, and we're in a market-based business and they don't tell me, like, of course I'm not going to hit the goal if they didn't tell me that. If they tell me, we could be super strategic about how we get there to ensure that we meet that together. So that's my first question. What is your goal? Now, how do we continue throughout that process to direct and redirect and re-navigate so we keep ourselves aligned? This is the feedback that we're getting. This is the interest. This is the offer that we got. This is what someone's thinking, but this is their restriction. What do you think about this? How are your feelings about this? Is this something you would consider? Okay. And then how do we get creative enough to craft structures and to craft deals to help people think differently and outside of their comfort zone? Because I believe that there's a deal to be made with any person at any time in any situation. It's just helping people realize and to achieve the meetings of the minds that like they need a mediator for. I'm a full-time mediator.
Yeah.
And the only way you could get there is through asking questions.
So how does this show up outside of sales for you?
Oh my gosh. With my team and their personal goals, right? When I hire someone, listen, I still ask when someone comes to work for me, what is your goal? What is your professional goal? But that's such a big question, right?
Yeah.
Especially in your first career, you don't know what your lifelong goal is.
Make
but what
money
is your goal?
2 years from now. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what the answer for most people is, whether they're honest about it or not. But is it to like understanding people's family frameworks and their family goals and their travel goals and their life learning and exploration goals? Like these are all part of the well-roundedness of a human being that makes them interesting and makes them a better contributor to our workforce. But we need to understand those aspects about them. So I think it's really pushing people to think and to dig deeper to help guide and create a safe and comfortable place where they can answer those questions, where they have the opportunity to change their answer as life evolves, because it does, and your goals will shift and change. But creating an environment and a workplace where you continue to support people along in that journey. And then in turn, encouraging my people to be asking the same of me and coming to me, because I need to be the person who I want to lead by example. Always. I can't be asking all of these tough questions and helping people or pushing them to try to be on this path of self-discovery if I'm not doing it myself, and also realizing how damn hard it is. There will be moments of severe confusion, a lot of isolation, fear. How do we lean into those emotions together and help people see like this is part of the process, this is part of the journey, but we could be in it together.
Yeah. So how do you do that from a vulnerability standpoint? How do you get people to come to you and hold you accountable to that? Because as the leader, I lead teams in our business, and oftentimes after a meeting, hey, what did you think? What feedback do you have? Oh, I thought you did great. And nobody wants to be like, you sucked here and you could have been better there. And they don't want to say that to the leader of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to really draw that out in a very intentional way. How do you do that?
Yes. So I love that. I certainly asked that question. And then normally, I think it was great. And this was good. And I was like, you know what? I don't like how I answered that question. During that meeting, I don't like the way my body language was, and I don't like my response. Let me dive deeper into, and then I will change. What I wish I would have done was be a little less defensive, be a little bit more relaxed, come at it from a different approach. Instead of coming at it from trying to prove my worth or to prove my value, instead ask the redirecting question for why we were not meeting each other at the same level. So what I will do is I will actually help brainstorm and reframe what I have done. Like, I made a mistake. I wish I did this differently. The next time I do, this is how I'm going to approach that situation. Did anyone else experience that during the meeting where there was something that came up that they wish that they had done a little bit differently? I find when I'm willing to admit my faults and my mistakes and my missteps and my failures and what I've learned from them, then people are more inclined to share about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. Actually, I've not done this yet, but I thought about that. I was thinking about this as I was reading your book. One question that popped into my mind is 1 to 10, how would you rate my performance? And I think you get most people be like, oh, it's like an 8. But then being able to ask, okay, what would have made it a 9?
Mhm.
what would have made it a 10? Like just giving, okay, great. I
I
love
like
that.
that.
I love that I did okay. I love that you think that. But what in the nitty gritty up here at the top, what would you do? So I'm going to start using that.
You know what? I'm going to start using that too, if you're okay with me taking that.
Please.
I love that. No, I think that's
We're
great.
sharing ideas here. That's what
Yeah,
we do.
that's what it's about.
Yeah.
No, I think that's awesome because I think that helps like the quantification aspect and then just focusing on like the small incremental difference versus the big picture. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Because so many times, if you are a successful person or
Mhm.
professional, the feedback is going to be nitty gritty. They're like the big stuff you've figured out and you're pretty good at. And so you're not going to get better. Nobody's going to come in and be like, you need to be way smarter in this area.
Yeah.
Or you're like, you totally don't know what you're talking
Mhm.
about. It's going to be little stuff like,
Oh,
hey, you didn't make eye contact with this person in the meeting. Oh, geez, I didn't realize that. It's probably not a big deal, but here's what happened. And that's the stuff you need. It's those little incremental improvements that you need a lot of to get better once you're at a certain level.
100%. And by not helping our teams or our people by pointing out those things, because so many of them are just mechanical. I still talk with my hands. And I know that. And sometimes I'm like, okay, this is what I do. And I explain to people, but you'll get like the tapping or ruffling with papers or swirling, just like nervous, natural, normal tics, not making eye contact. When you feel uncomfortable in a situation, how you start looking around, helping point those out and then redirecting for when that happens. What is the mechanism to pull someone else in on the team? Actually, Bianca, Tom has done that really well, that you can maybe pull the pressure down a little bit and pull someone else in. So it becomes more of a conversation and a dialogue versus being in the hot seat. If there's a moment in time when you're like, I don't know if I'm the right person to be in the hot seat right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go back to your team a little bit because I wanted to ask you about how you built your teams. Read a quote from the book. I wanted to focus on growing and harvesting incredible talent and build an environment that fostered growth and inspired my people to become the best versions of themselves in business and in life. Love that. Let's like break that down a little bit. How do you look for people? If that's the goal, how are you qualifying the people you bring onto your team in the first place?
Yeah. And again, I'll say I have not always done this right. I had a mission when I started my team, very different from a lot of other people in the space. Most real estate brokers, their team is based off of the team leader and their name and their brand. I never wanted that. I wanted to create a place and have much more of a corporate mindset of encouraging and forcing this collaboration over this competition or this hierarchy. I just didn't love that on the teams that I had been on previously. So when I started my business, I felt when I was young and I was 22, I was given a shot. People should deserve a shot if they're willing to work for it. What I've realized about talent over time is that you can't make someone want it if they don't want it for themselves. That was a really hard lesson for me because I was like, but they have all the opportunity and they have all the resources. I'm giving them the training and I support, I believe in them. Gosh, I wish, like, I see that so many times that doesn't exist. But if someone's not willing to work for it, you could give them all the tools and the resource in the world. They just don't want it bad enough. And that's okay. But also recognizing that I'm probably not the right place for them. And that is also okay.
So how do you evaluate that though?
Yeah.
Because we see that in our business too, because we're a sales organization. I'm a salesperson and we have, I don't even know where this evaluation came from, but it's called the 16 PF. And there's one score at the bottom. That's drive. Yeah. And if we get somebody who is below a 3 out of 10 on that, I think only 1 or 2 people ever have made it and been successful with that score. And so it's interesting because we keep seeing people come in and they can be great and they can be motivated and they can want to succeed and know what to do. But we've just found there's like a kind of an it factor in that one score. I'm curious how you think about or capture that drive in your business.
So I find that out through asking a lot of more of the personal questions, because I think like understanding, again, leaning into the story of someone's life, someone's family, and what actually motivates them for why are they working and what are they looking to do and what do they have to prove? Are they proving it for someone else? Are they proving it for themselves? Like, why are they showing up and why are they working? What when you look at your life story, like, how did you end up here? And what is your goal? And truthfully, I don't have a science or a metric. I'd love to hear more about how you quantify drive. But when I hear people talk about their family situation or the way that they were raised, like signs of entitlement right away, like red flag. So understanding the way someone's family raised them and the environment that they grew up in, the level of hardship that they had, and then also at those moments of hardship when they're talking about it, how did they redirect? How did they repivot? Has that become something that is continually, they haven't been able to get out of that cycle and they've just been missing the opportunity? That's the case again. And this is where sometimes, like, I recognize in myself in the beginning, I wanted to be the person to extend the opportunity, but people just couldn't get out of their own cycle. And you have to figure out a way to break that cycle for them, or to help them have the coping tools to break that cycle, to look at themselves differently, of being able to achieve and accomplish success and make money. And the psychological component of that is very hard, and it's a very new project and takes a long time.
What are the signs that somebody just needs a shot? What are the signs that it's been their environment and their opportunity and not their drive or skill that's causing the problem?
I think it's the continued, like, falling down, stepping back up, like the resilience of continuing to keep and stay in motion and going. I like that versus like long periods of lulls of not being able to get back in the game. Someone who continues to try, they fail, they try, they fail, they try, and they just keep going at it. That's someone that I'm really interested in. I want to learn more about that person and what's going on. Again, don't have a proven science, because sometimes it's a factor of that. On the flip side of not having the chance, it's failure, then giving up too quickly. Yes, you're trying again, but you're not sticking to something long enough to have the case study of what actually will work and what doesn't. But that's something that I tend to like to see, is like someone who's like leaning into it and keeps and stays in motion, because I think motion and momentum are very important.
Love it. And then, so then they come in and you have a goal setting exercise of some kind.
Yeah.
What does that look like? You shared a little bit, but what does that process look like?
I think another big thing for sales, particularly in the beginning of when I started my business, I don't think I was fully honest with the amount of time that it takes the average person to make money in sales. And now I'm way more honest about that. And truly, I think it's scientific. If you're willing to work a certain amount of hours and make a certain amount of calls, this is the period in which you will start to make money. If you do anything less than that, the time frame all of a sudden goes from 6 to 12 months to 18 to 24 months, because it's about confidence. It's about trial and error and effort and failure and learning from it and getting back up. So like it's purely like a numbers game. You have to get through the numbers before you get good at it. So I think,
amen. And amen. We see that in our business too, but our sales cycle is longer. So like you have to come in and you have to bust your hump, because you are not going to be successful for 12 to 24 months.
Yep.
You're just not going to be there. It takes too much time to build that momentum. And so we see people in that first 6 to 12 months, oh, this is good. And it's like, you don't understand. Like, you don't understand that the clock is ticking. And so you need somebody to come in with a little bit of healthy paranoia to be like, we got to go now.
Totally. 100%. And I think it's very hard when you don't have business or you don't have the proper, I don't want to say direction, but you feel the slowness, especially in sales. It becomes very entrepreneurial. Yeah, you're having a slow day or you're getting a lot of rejection. How do you keep going? What do you do different? How do you redirect? So we set up that time period of, okay, this is what it's going to look like. If you have zero business, this should be the number that you can expect to make over the course of, let's call it 16 months. Year 2 and year 3 look a lot different, but it's getting through that first hump in order to reach that next benchmark and that's next milestone. But in that time frame, these are the activities, and we call it our activity index. This is what you need to be doing every single day. First of all, if you're not willing to talk about that you are in sales and that you are selling a product and letting people know that you have made, whether it's a career change or a shift or redirection, whatever it is, that timeline, all of a sudden, it's going to be cut by a fraction. It's going to be so much longer for when you actually start to get that adoption. There is not one person in my orbit from the beginning of when I started real estate who didn't know I was in real estate.
Yeah.
Even when I didn't know what the heck I was talking about and I was selling nothing, I was just trying to provide value and talk about real estate. So whenever someone thought about, oh, I have a real estate question, I wonder what Bianca thinks about that. Or
Yeah.
how is the market doing? You become a resource. And that is the first obstacle, is people taking you seriously and seeing you as a resource in the industry. It doesn't mean they're going to buy from you, and doesn't mean they're going to sell from you. But if they're talking to you like you've already accomplished a very big hurdle and barrier to entry, then you get to reach the next threshold with the relationship.
All right, let's unpack sales a little bit. And I think if you're not a salesperson and you're listening to this, hold on, don't tune out, because this is just as relevant to you. That I forget the name of his book exactly, but Daniel Pink has a great book on sales. It's called like Everybody Sells or something like that. And his point was like 3 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 jobs are sales specific jobs. And if you look at the job description for all the rest, there's some element of sales in it. You're selling yourself. If you want a job, you have to sell yourself. If you are working in a company, you have to sell your ideas to other people. You have to continue to sell yourself so that people believe in you and want to bring work to you and work with you. So these
everything is, if you are a parent, you are selling yourself to your kids. If you're in a relationship, you're selling yourself to your partner. Like every single thing can benefit from sales skills and training, because that is the world that we live in. That's the basis of relationships. It doesn't mean that, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that they're transactional. It means that you need to be willing to communicate, connect, collaborate, help people understand your point of view, be able to have and reach that meeting of the minds and come up with the pathway and the process for what happens after this. That's the basis of every relationship, personal and professional. So sales is the heart of all of that.
That was great, because that answered the question I was going to ask, which is most of people think of sales as transactional, just like I got to hump everybody's leg until they like me or buy from me. And that's not what it is. So I had a friend of mine who's an HR consultant now. She was a head of HR, runs her own business now, very successful. She launched her company and we were getting coffee as she was launching it. She proceeded to tell me about the 3 clients that they were launching the business with, and then proceeded to tell me how much she was nervous about sales because she doesn't like sales. And I was like, but you just said you have 3 clients. How did you get those clients? And she was like, that wasn't sales. I go to events and I have a big network and I meet a lot of people and I just try to help people. And so these people had needs and we were talking about it, and I told them what they might want to do. And they said, can we hire you to do it? But that's not sales. I was like, no, that is exactly sales. That is exactly sales. And she was like, really? Oh, and it just totally shifted her mindset. And we've caught up on that conversation. It comes up all the time. And she's never had a problem with sales since then. Yeah. But it's reframed the way that you said, which is it's relationship, collaboration, helping somebody set a vision, helping somebody see a path that maybe they can't see for themselves, and then helping them walk that path. And maybe they buy from you or maybe they don't, but that's the process.
Yes, 100%. And if someone doesn't buy from, like, I am so confident in the way that I connect with people and the value and the service I provide, because it has nothing to do with the transaction. It is truly like the relationship for life. And it's why my business has blown up as fast as it did. Yes, I've been doing this for 10 years. My company is only 4 years old. In the first year that I started my company, we were ranked the #1 transaction team in New York City and New York State, number 14 in the nation. That wasn't by coincidence. It wasn't by chasing a dollar, and it wasn't by chasing a deal. It's by doing so many deals, by focusing on so many relationships, that I grow with every single client that's in my network and in my Rolodex, because they want to work with me. And it doesn't matter what I sell, whether it's real estate or a book or a course, because they want to understand and they want to work with Bianca. And I, the same, want to work with them, because I believe in the product that they're building and what they're working on and the way that they're growing their business. I'm fortunate at a point in time where I get to work with people and I get to be choosy about my clients. And that's been so exciting, because I get to grow with people. But that is what it is, the relationship over anything. And that's where the authenticity comes in.
Yeah. When
the
you say
dollar amount of the
relationship,
transaction, it's like, that's so obvious and evident when that's what the salesperson is chasing. And then you just become a transaction operator.
Yeah. So when you say relationship, I just want to clarify this too. Yeah. I think people think, I know people and they like me, What's the difference between a relationship that turns into something fruitful or that creates value in some way and just a person?
Honestly, I have to put it in the most simple terms. The way that you shift that, it's doing what you say you're going to do when you said you're going to do it. I've become someone who operates and who executes and delivers on everything I said I was going to do for all of my clients when I promised I was going to do it. And not overextending and not under delivering. Like, you have to be willing to deliver. And when that's become my brand, and that's why people continue to work with me, and the same people continue to work with me. But it's like when then all of a sudden comes to you and they know I'm going to go to her because she's going to get it done. I know that I want to work with her because she's going to get it done.
Yeah.
That wasn't because I sold the most expensive apartment for them. And that's why, like I say, so basically, you said you were going to send someone a report at Monday at 12. Make sure before Monday at 12, the report goes out. You said that you were going to call someone back in an hour. Make sure in an hour you call them back. That is like that continued pattern of behavior of promising on what you're going to deliver. Then all of a sudden, you could start making the bigger asks.
So
you could,
I like that. But I think that's the easy part, right? Is like doing what you say you're going to do for a client. Let's talk about people who are not yet clients, somebody you just are meeting for the first time. What does that look like for the person you've never met that you maybe want to become a client? And how do you get out of, oh, they're a nice person I met and actually have a relationship? I have a follow-up, but I'll leave that there.
So for me, it's providing a value or a service. I hear a lot of people say, don't do any work for free. That's never worked for me. I work for a lot of people for free. Until then, they work with me for life. And I'm okay with that upfront effort and energy and cost in order to win the business. But it's why, like, I see a lot of my competitors, we don't do that point and we don't start working on that until we get an agreement, or we don't do that until we get payment. I'm happy to be a resource to you. This is exactly what I would do. This is what I would change, giving them the free information because they can't necessarily execute or deliver on it. Sometimes they'll take my ideas and they'll work with someone else, but they'll remember that the idea was mine. And then 2 or 3 years later, they'll come back to me. Why? Because here's the playbook.
Yeah.
This is the way.
Because they were your ideas. Their person doesn't have any ideas. And when they need more ideas, they got to come back to you.
Correct. So that's what has worked for me, is continuing to be valuable and to be a strategist, to not be a salesperson, to help people understand and craft the strategy of how we're going to achieve their goals. That is what I do for my clients before they become a client.
Yeah. How do you lose? What does it look like when somebody doesn't hire you?
So I always ask for feedback. I think that's very important. And dissecting, like being very honest with myself. Was this something I could have done to better win the business? Was there an external factor here that was at play? Obviously, there are money and money components in a lot of these decisions that are made, but also recognizing, did I lose it because of something that I did, or did I lose it because of my fee structure or my compensation? Because in the beginning, when you're starting off, I chose to be more creative with my fee structure to win more business. Then I reached a point in time where I said, I don't need to do that anymore. And if someone doesn't want to work with me and pay me market rate, then they should go work with someone else, because I know the value of the service that I deliver on. But in order to have that confidence and to get to that point in time, first of all, I needed to have the book of business, and I needed to recognize where I sat out in the marketplace and what value and what service I delivered different from my competitors. And once I had that understanding, then I was able to hold a lot firmer. And I've become very okay with that I'm not willing to reduce or compromise or sacrifice my fees. At the end of the day, this is work, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Let's talk about goals.
Yeah.
I think we've got there. And in the book, you say that you have given up metric specific goals, which I was like, ooh, all right, we got to talk about that. What does that mean that you gave up metric specific goals? And what do you do when it comes to goals for yourself and for your team?
Yeah. So for myself, I have to go back in time to explain how I got to here. As someone who has always been very goal oriented, like I still have my list of every resolution and goal for each birthday, like printed on paper in a folder in my office. Been doing it my whole entire life. And I found that I kept writing these numbers, right? I was taught SMART goals, create a measurable, achievable goal on a piece of paper to hold yourself accountable to attain and create the pathway and the structure in order to get there. I found myself in this constant cycle of chasing these numbers and being super disappointed by not hitting the number that was on a piece of paper and not looking at instead of what were all of the other things that came into play in order to become the person to work towards trying to achieve that goal. Again, I'll do I want to lose 15 pounds this year. And then because I was at 12 pounds instead of 15 pounds, being super disappointed with myself that I didn't hit the number. But it means I woke up in the morning, and it means I went to the gym, and it means that I started eating healthier, making better decisions, and sleeping more. Like, all of those things are part of the structural character change of the person who is working towards trying to achieve the goal, even though I didn't hit the number. And not only was it putting me in this constant loop of frustration and not feeling confident enough and lacking confidence because I wasn't hitting the goal that I had set out, but it was also making me so narrow-minded to not recognizing the bigger goals or other opportunities when they presented themselves to me. Where this came to be, I told you in that first year of business, I did not have it wasn't sustainable to think in my first year of business I'd be a top ranking team in the country. That was not even a goal. So at that point in time, I was like, wow, that's insane, when all I did was focusing on being a good person, giving back to the business, working as hard as I can, showing up for my people, like the character traits that I needed to be. The achievement at the end of it ended up coming there. You need to have a direction and you need to have a pathway that you're working towards. But how do we restructure that? I started reframing, thinking about each year when I set my goals, how do I look at an area in my business, in my life, that I feel that I am lacking in, that I feel like a quality or an intention is not as present as I want it to. And if I focus more so on that intention, that I will bring more attention to it, and it will help me reach that next threshold of goal setting and unlocking this other potential. So that's where I am now. So like for this year, my intentions are being relentless. How do I be more relentless in my business? How do I lead with more courage? How do I have more compassion? That's what I have written on my wall. That's what I'm working towards. I feel that if I could work on those things, if I be more relentless in my business activity and my initiatives for how I am showing up and the way I'm showing up, more opportunity will start coming to me. If I start operating with more courage, and then all of a sudden, like, especially as I'm entering a new venture with a book and talking about podcasts and being super vulnerable and talking about all the failures and my business models online, that takes courage. I want to lean into that. I feel like that's going to open itself up into other communities and other aspects that are not current existing business models for me. But yes, that is the long-term goal. I want to build community. And the only way for me to start building more community is by embracing more of this courage and this storytelling. And so that's the way that I have shifted in how I now reframe and refocus how I set my goals and identify my intentions.
How does that translate to the team? Because I imagine you bring somebody in, you're like, I want you to hit some numbers. Like,
yeah.
So how does that translate? Because I get that, and that resonates with me. But I think there's a drawback to, but I still got to close 10 deals, or I got to close $1 million in business, or whatever it is. Like, how do you balance those two and help your team members balance those two?
So I think it's important for everyone, I write what works and what has worked for me. There's some things that will not resonate with everyone. There are people on my team who need to call 7 people every morning before 8 a.m. because that is how you're going to get your momentum in the morning. So I'm not saying every person needs a different type of tool to help them be successful in order to hit their goals. In terms of sales benchmarks and goals with my team, one thing that I do now that I think's been very important is having every single agent specifically and every member on my team identify and create their own goals. I am not giving them the financial goal that they need to hit because I'm not determining their work schedule or how hard they're willing to work. If someone is happy making $50,000 and that will help their family, then that is their goal. If another person needs to make $1 million a year, okay, what does that mean? What do you need to put into your business in order to make sure you achieve that? And let's be very real and have an honest conversation about it, of recognizing what that means in terms of how you're structuring yourself. But that goal needs to come from the person. Then once they identify what is their goal and why is that number or why is that framework, how is that helping or impacting their life? How is that changing or shifting their family structure? What is the goal when they make that money or achieve that goal? What are they going to do with it to alleviate some pressure or some stress in their life that they didn't necessarily think was possible a year ago? Like giving it the real intrinsic value of why the money is not just the money goal, but it's actually providing and giving a resource to open yourself up to something else. I think you have to make that connection and then create the pathway, paying off credit card debt or putting a child through college. Like, what does that mean? And how does that shift and impact how you look at yourself as the provider for your family or in your relationship? Like diving deeper into those conversations, I think is very important.
Yeah, because money is not the ultimate motivator. To your point, if somebody's motivated by money, they're generally motivated by whatever picture they have in their head when they think of having a lot of money. It's whatever that vision is or whatever that movie is that they're playing in their head, whether it's kids going to college and living in a nice house or having a lot of cars, whatever that vision is for them, that's the motivator. It's not the money. I even got clarity on this deeper a couple of weeks ago working with a coach that I work with, where I was like, because I've always thought I'm very money motivated. I'm very money excitable.
Yeah.
Like I find making money to be exciting, but it's not motivating. Like what motivates me are the intrinsic things that I get because of the work.
Correct.
And then I want to be doing work that makes me a lot of money because that's really exciting for me. And so it was interesting just to be like, oh yeah, like it's not motivating, it's exciting. So then what are the motivators, and trying to figure out what my own motivators are.
I completely agree with that. And I think also, especially in the world we live in now, like with social media, where everyone gets in this loop of comparing themselves and what's reality, what's absolute nonsense, like helping, especially my people, recognize like, this is what you could actually afford with this amount of money. And this is what it actually does for your family. And this is how it will help it. In this country, we do not have strong financial literacy. No. And it's so unfortunate that most people don't learn those skills until they are in, if ever, a professional workspace. If someone's willing to help teach and train that to them, I make that a really big priority of helping beyond the sales skills that I'm giving people. How do we help teach our people and have money conversations and create more financial literacy in the workplace so our people feel more motivated and more empowered by their own financial success?
Yeah, I love that. And that is a big problem, the lack of financial literacy. I think it's also, there's a thing, I don't know if other countries are like this. I know growing up, we didn't talk about money. I had no idea how much money my parents made. I had no idea how much they saved. I didn't know what they did with it. Like it was like, don't ask that question. Like you never asked what somebody else made. And it's interesting because I got into a work environment where everybody makes the same percentage on their book of business. And we post everybody's book of business, what everybody makes. And to the point that we go to our national sales meeting every year and they put a board up with 500 people's numbers on it. And you can look and you're like, oh, I know what he made. I know what she made. It's so open. And because it's so open, we all talk about it with each other. And we all talk about, what do you do if you get a big commission check? Where do you put it? What are you doing? And who are you working with? I think my level of financial literacy has gone up exponentially because I work in an environment where I openly talk with my colleagues about what we do with our money. Not necessarily how much do you make and how much do you make and is it valuable? We're all in sales. So there's an element of you make whatever you can make. Yep. And there's no, the company values me less or you more, what you get with like some salaried structures. Just the willingness to talk. I think if you can talk with your friends about what they do with their money and where they put it, you learn things, you find out that your friends are doing things better than you, or maybe they're not doing things that they should be doing and you can help them. I just think we should be talking about it more.
I completely agree with that. Of these certain topics that are taboo, but how are you going to learn? If you grew up in a family environment where this was your relationship with money, and you never think if there could be a different relationship with money, you just need to be challenged in those different ways. And the way that my relationship with money was very different from my relationship with money now, but it is a relationship that needs to evolve and grow and change and put resources into it and time thinking about it. And so I do think it's so important to be talking about it and to create a space where people can talk about it, because you will learn so much more.
Yeah. And that's not to say to people listening that I'm not encouraging everyone to be an expert on money management and investing or anything like that. There are professionals out there who do that you can rely on. But I think that's one of them, is like, do you have access to good ones? Like talking to your friends about what they're doing with their money, not even what they make, but what do you do with your money? Like you can get connected to good people. Again, making me ask, back to that, right? All right. I'll step off that soapbox.
Yeah.
A couple of things I want to ask about. We're going to run out of time with all the things I want to ask you, but I want to go back to Professor Mulcahy a little bit. Okay. And you talk about his enthusiasm. In the book, you talk about flowing with life and how you don't want to swim against the current. You want to get into the current and swim with it. I struggle with this personally. So we're going to do a little therapy session at the end here for O'Brien. But when you're in a performance role, a sales role or any other, you're an executive, there are things that have to happen. You have disciplines you have to do every day. That, like you mentioned, Professor Mulcahy's, like, he's running a successful business. How have you been able, or how do you see him separating the discipline and hard work and grind of becoming successful in what you're doing or maintaining that success and the effervescence and carefree ability to move around every 6 months and this go with the flow thing? Because personally, I struggle to reconcile those two. I spend a lot of time thinking about it and I still haven't figured it out for myself. So would love your wisdom.
So I think it's really important to recognize like the amount of control and power we have over our own organization of our time. And time being a real resource of, like, we all have the ability to wake up earlier or stay up later if we want it bad enough. And if we are organized enough with our time, or we're creative enough with our structure, we can create these disciplines and practices so you can work to achieve these things. I have found a lot of power in disciplines and practices. While I was writing this book, I woke up every single day at 3:00 in the morning. I wrote from 3 to 8:30. So by 8:30, I could start my real estate business. And then at the end of the day, when everyone had gone home at 8:00 at night, I would start writing again, as to not disrupt anything. But at that season, and it was very hard, but it was for a period of time where I knew I wanted this so bad, I was willing to do that for it. And so that was a very real, honest conversation I needed to have with myself of, okay, during this period, I'm not going to be able to exercise every day. And I'm not going to be able to go to these social functions or do this or to go out to client dinners. I had a conversation with my leadership team of, I cannot go out to client dinners and I cannot be eating and drinking every night because I need to work on this. And so for the next 6 months, I need you guys to step in a little bit so we continue to harvest those working relationships. I'm going to be doing lunches. If someone else could pick up dinner, that's what we need to do in order to make sure everything gets done. But that took an intentional conversation. But now, with that being said, coming out on the other side of it, and how do you have this freedom or this flexibility? Like, now I'm in a place where I create more boundaries for myself into travel. What is my motivator? If money came to my doorstep tomorrow, what would I do? I want to see the world. So, like, I'm going to continue to do that. Doesn't mean that I'm going to take off when I go travel. I'm still going to be working. I'm going to wake up in the morning before my family wakes up, and I'm going to work to make sure I set myself up for the day and make sure my team's set up for the day. And then I'm going to go see the world and I'm going to explore places. And that's the way that I've been able to find the balance. So I think it needs to be a mix of both, and recognizing like the seasonality of life and that things come in different periods of time where you just need to hunker down or go all in.
Wonderful.
But tell me I know we're running out on time, but now I'm like curious, why are you resistant to this? Or why are you struggling with this?
Well, here's what I struggle with is I get up at 4:45 in the morning. Yep. I go to the gym before my boys and wife wake up so that I can get that in, because I prioritize that. I enjoy that. I come home, I feed them breakfast, I get ready, I go to work. I work from 8 to 5:30, 6 o'clock. I come home, then it's dinner and kids and all that. And we get the kids down to bed at 7:30, 7:45. I have about an hour to do other things. And then I go to bed at like 8:45 or 9 o'clock because that's what I have to do to maintain
the morning,
some semblance of like health and wakeness during the day, alertness during the day. And so I think it's okay, great. And I'm in this season it is a season of life with young kids, and I get that. But there is an element where I find when you are really driven to go, it's okay, I got to do the next thing. I got to do the next thing. I got to do the next thing. And especially in sales, it's different than maybe a different job. We talk about this on the sales and service side of our business. On the service side, you show up and there's a pile of work that needs to get done. And when you finish that work, you go home, you can check out, you go on vacation, whatever. On the sales side, you show up and you have to make work. Yes. And there is no end to that.
Correct.
And so I think it takes a lot of mental discipline to figure out, at least for me, how to be really intense and disciplined and focused to push the world in the direction I want it to go. And then to be able to detach and be carefree on the other side. There's a lot of intentionality there, I think.
There is. And I think going into the season of life, you're making a decision for yourself and for your family to make sure you continue to prioritize that. And so that internally will shorten your day because like it truly never ends, right?
Yeah.
But that will shift as ages and times change. And like you will look back on all of that being a better and a stronger and a more present father will give you the freedom and the flexibility in a few years' time when everyone gets a little bit older and that time happens really fast. So I totally get that struggle and that challenge when the work never stops because you could always be doing more. But how do you know this is enough for right now? And I think that's just therapy. This is all therapy.
The other side of this too is like the whole going with the flow thing I struggle with because I have this mindset for myself that I have to get up every day like Sisyphus and push the boulder up the hill. And if I'm not leaning on that boulder, it's just going to roll back. And like, I think of the world as inertia and entropy. Like things want to decay and fall apart. If you don't give your business attention, it won't be here after long. And so I find the analogy of going with the flow difficult because I feel like the flow is inertia and entropy. Whereas if you want to do something successful, you have to swim upstream and you have to put the effort in. And so I guess curious how you reconcile those two.
Yeah, I think I don't necessarily disagree. If you want to make things happen in life, you need to be the reason that they happen in life. But I also think that like when there are different curves and different currents, like one path that you may have always been on and you've just been going, there may be other opportunities that present themselves when the current shifts or when the current changes. And it may actually be a path of least resistance of getting to the same goal. It may be very different. It may feel a little bit more relaxed, but listen, I believe like operating with urgency is crucial. Like I'm a very urgent person. So that's the character trait. But like there's also some times where it's like, okay, like this is going in this way. And this moment of self-exploration and journey is leading us in a path that we didn't think, but we're learning all of these things. Like maybe we need to take 6 months or a month or a few weeks to just explore what that looks like before we like go back to what's been tried and true, what has always worked, and what we know is the proven method, because there can be another proven method if we allow it to reveal itself.
I think that's beautiful. And that's a great place for us to wrap up. I will encourage everyone to go out and read Bianca's book. As you can tell, it resonated with me in a lot of ways. Again, the book is Mastering Intentions, 10 Practices to Amplify Your Power and Lead with Lasting Impact. There's probably 100 tips or practices that you could pull out of that book. If you pull 1 or 2 out, it'll help you live your life in a better way, whether you're in sales or not. I think just the power of intention and working intention into your life is really powerful. Bianca, I wish you continued success and appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your perspective.
Thanks so much for having me on. I had so much fun.
Hey folks, one last thing before you go. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with future guests. That's it. Thanks for coming. Go make the most of your business and the people in it.